Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reacting to Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp, speak about democracy. Now, this is from an interview in 2018 that I think a lot of people have not seen. I'll put the link in the description, and it was a pretty good interview, in my opinion. He talked about democracy, capitalism, all of this stuff. I reacted to his thoughts on capitalism in particular, and this one is his thoughts on democracy. And the reason I wanted to react to this is because, you know, Palantir's Alex Karp kind of self-identifies as a socialist. Peter Thiel, his co-founder, is very more right-wing libertarian, voted for Donald Trump. Alex Karp doesn't like Donald Trump. So there's a lot of different mixtures of his personality when it comes to the intersection of how he thinks about democracy and overall society. And I wanted to react to some of his thoughts on how he thinks about democracy, some of the problems he thinks that exist with democracy, and then overall Palantir's ability to maintain democracies for countries. There's a reason they don't work with Russia and China. They're not democratic. There's a reason they try to help Europe sustain their democracy. There's a reason they're working in Ukraine. There's a reason they take on governmental deals with the United States when other tech companies don't do that. They care about democratic Western freedoms and values, and they want to preserve those things, and the best way to do that is to protect democracy. So here's what Alex Karp thinks about democracy.
Worries you at the moment most? Is there something where you think there is a danger?
Well, I mean, democratic societies, the people I would vote for are not doing well. I mean, there's almost no one I would vote for who's you could call successful. I mean, I'm not saying everyone has to agree with me, but I think if we had a range of people that in private we were to vote, and we had a range of people that we would never vote for in this room, the people we would never vote for are doing much better than they should. There'd be disagreement. I mean, I get in trouble in America for being very much on the side that we should allow everyone to speak. No, I think this political correctness thing in America is a terrible danger because you can no longer articulate ideas. But be that as it may, if we voted in this room, the distribution would probably be here and here, and the people we consider viable, you know, I think they're not politically where they should be. I think that's kind of obvious. And then how do you change that? There's this trust issue. Once you lose trust, it's very hard to get it back. And then, of course, there's all these technical things that people always want to talk to me about, but you know, they exacerbate these problems. If you look at any of the tech issues that people bring up, the reason why they're so pernicious is because the underlying structure is weak, in my view.
And I worry about, I don't know, I would very much agree with Alex that the political discourse is completely dominated on a global scale by, where that is possible, by either, although these old political categories don't really work anymore, but let me say by either right-wing or left-wing populists. And they totally dominate the political discourse, and that results in some of the factors that we see today. In reality, we have huge opportunities and we have huge problems to solve. We will live in a world of 11 billion people. That is an absolute fact. There will be 5 billion Asians, 4 billion Africans, and 2 billion the rest of the world. We need, and population will not grow beyond that, because actually there will never be more babies in this world than we have right now. So the growth will not continue, but these cohorts will come into, will carry through. We need to feed this world. We need to keep this world healthy. We need to somehow protect this planet. And if you look at, my personal concern is that if you look at the public discourse about technology in this field, it goes exactly in the wrong direction. And we would actually, I feel that we need more technology to solve these problems.
Okay, so some interesting thoughts there about Palantir's Alex Karp and the other gentleman that was here talking about democracy. One of the points that he made at the end was that, you know, we are going to get into a world where there are legitimately 11 billion people, and that is a fact. And so if we have those 11 billion people, well, we've got to feed them. We've got to take care of them. We've got to make sure they're healthy. We've got to make sure that they have the capacity to be able to achieve the things that they want to achieve. We've got to make sure that they have the infrastructure set up for them to succeed in a world and have resources that are available for them. One of the ways you do that, or two of the ways you do that, number one is you have technology that actually accelerates that innovation, that allows people to have better lives and not just automates all their jobs away, which Palantir is a fan of, actually making sure that people don't lose their jobs and people are helped. And second of all is you've got to make sure people can talk to each other. And I think, that was the core thing when Karp was saying he would never vote for anyone who's running for office right now, is because none of them are sort of imposing this idea of actually engaging in free speech, actually listening to the other side, actually having a democracy. Now, they probably can't because our media is so polarized that they have to kind of pick one side or the other, because if you don't pick the conservative side, then the Republican media doesn't cover. If you don't pick the Democratic side, then the mainstream media doesn't cover. And if you don't get that media coverage, you don't have the ability to penetrate the consciousness of different voters. So you've got to, at some level, play the game when it comes to politics. But nonetheless, it still signals how sad it is in our democracy that you got a CEO like Alex Karp that it has a hard time voting for any of the people that are running for Congress or for president. And a lot of people in the world have a hard time voting for people. Most people voted for Biden because he was the best they had. A lot of people voted for Trump out of desperation. So it's a scary thing in a democracy when we start to see it fall apart. And America's democracy is strong and America's democracy is healthy, but make no mistake, America's democracy could absolutely fall apart. Like, democracies have their time and then their time ends. We've seen it time and time again in history. Leaders have too much power. Authoritarians get in power. You use people as scapegoats. Like, there's all different ways. Sometimes political correctness gets so, literally Barack Obama the other day was speaking about how being woke and political correctness is starting to become not a cool thing. It's not cool to just, tell someone that you're cooler than them and quote unquote be an activist because they messed up on a single word. And so Karp makes a really good point that political correctness in America being imposed the way that it is detrimental because you don't have the ability to articulate ideas. And if you can't articulate ideas, then what are we doing in a society? Like, in a democracy, the whole goal of a democracy is you say something, I say something, we both disagree, but we talk it out. And even if we don't get to understand each other's sides, we at least have the capacity to reason with each other. We might not change each other's minds, but we have the ability to put our ideas out there. In some parts of the world, hint, hint, China, hint, hint, the Middle East, hint, hint, Russia, you cannot say something against someone else. It is impossible. They crack down your ability to even communicate. So if you don't accept something as true, or if you don't accept an idea, or if you don't care about an idea, the idea of content creation, what is content creation? All of us are just putting out ideas into the world. If we can't articulate our ideas, our democracy falls apart. And it's not that the United States is going to stop you from, articulating your ideas, or that democracy is falling apart to that end, but it is to say that there is a line that could be crossed if we don't actually protect our democracy. And I think that was Karp's entire point around how if we can't have free speech, people can't communicate with each other. If we polarize ourselves to the left and right in order to attract mainstream media attention for us to be able to speak the things that we want that only goes into the echo chambers that the crowds want to hear, then it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy of not actually having a thriving democracy. And as a result of that, you get a company like Palantir. This is why I think Karp feels so passionate about this, to try to defend democracies, to try to help democracies, to try to recognize the threat of authoritarian regimes, and to try to create fundamental values that protect civil liberties at the intersection of privacy and data, that establishes the ability for a democracy to be healthy in the face of all the reasons why a democracy could potentially fall. That's why I think Palantir ultimately cares about this stuff. It's spearheaded by the CEO. The CEO cares about this stuff, Alex Karp, and as a result of him caring about it, the company is going to care about it as well. So those are my thoughts on Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp's thoughts on democracy and what's the problems with it. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one.